Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing Killer Inside the Mind of Aaron Hernandez, directed by Gino McDermott. What led to the mysterious fall and shocking death of NFL superstar Aaron Hernandez? That's a synopsis given from Netflix. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with true crime. One, the glorification of it is kind of troubling for me. But number two, something about true crime is indefinitely just fascinating to me personally, and a lot of people out there as well. I think ever since the creation of serial podcasts within the last 5 to 10 years, it's really blossomed into something that I've wanted to continue to follow up true crime, see what's happening. It's very fascinating to me to watch the process of true crime to find out what is the cause of this, that, or the other. This specific documentary is focused on the former Patriots player Aaron Hernandez. So Aaron Hernandez was pretty much in my scope. The only thing I knew him for was being a professional NFL player and having some troubling upbringings and maybe just being a little bit excessive off the, just a lot to handle off of the field. And so I wanted to watch this documentary to see if I couldn't find out a little bit more about the individual, Aaron Hernandez, and the trials, tribulations, the victims, the people he affected, all of the above. And so with this documentary, sitting around 3 hours and 22 minutes, I thought this was pretty well paced. Maybe that second episode was a little bit chonky for me, just a little bit thick in giving us information, reiterating information that we might have already known. How could this superstar do this? How he was an NFL player, he had everything. It's like, yeah, I know, but what I'm really looking for is reasoning. Why did Aaron Hernandez, commit atrocities, or why was he accused of it, or why was it committed? This, that, and the other. So, let me talk about some pros and cons of the documentary before kind of really going into some details and possible spoilers. I'll let you know before we get into it. And I do want to let everyone know that I don't want to. This podcast is primarily going to be focused on the murderer, Aaron Hernandez, and I don't want it to take away from the victims that he in the crimes that he's accused of doing. I think something about true crime is kind of sticky when it comes down to talking about the victims and talking about the murderer, because we generally tend to talk about the murderer or the person who's accused of doing the crime about 2 to 3 times as much as we do the victim, because generally the victim was undeserving of it. They weren't living a life of crime. They were just, a lot of times, wrong place, wrong time. And so it just generally makes it a little bit slightly less, you could say it's slightly less interesting to look at a normal person and then see why they got murdered versus look at someone crazy and see why they're going to murder somebody. So I do want to just kind of touch on that. Just the fetishizing the murderer is not something I want to do, but it's just this podcast is going to primarily focused on the murder or on the crime. The pros of this documentary: lots of footage, like a surprising amount of footage, like to the point where I don't even know why this didn't happen sooner. I'm pretty sure the footage, all of the footage they had of Aaron Hernandez seemed so up to date and relevant, almost to a disturbingly personal degree. Like, they have cameras at places where the crime scene was happening, places he was before the crime scene, places he was after the crime scene. They have cameras of him in his house. They have audio of him in the jail. They have audio of him before and after the crime. There's so much evidence, an overwhelming amount of evidence, and overwhelming amount of footage that it's just like, holy shit. I mean, we're right there with them. This documentary also touches on how football is impacting the youth. In the first episode, they really talk about just the discipline and really the I don't want to say trials and tribulations, but the toll that football can take on a young person's life. And well, they start to touch on some of the diseases that can come about from it, such as CTE, which is touched on in the latter episode. The cinematography of the city of, I believe it's Connecticut or somewhere in New England area, is beautiful. I think some of the drone shots in documentaries can become excessive. The one I'm thinking of the most is the 4-hour Michael Jackson documentary, which like 2 hours of drone shots because it was all audio and talking heads. The good thing about this documentary, if you want to say it's a good thing, is that we do have all that footage and all of that courtroom footage as well. It feels very much like there's much more of an expansive view and perspective, expansive perspectives on this documentary. Let me see. They did take the time in this documentary. Let's just say there's probably about 30 something minutes dedicated specifically to Odin's perspective, who was the victim in the latter case, not the Boston case. There's actually technically multiple murder cases that Aaron Hernandez has to go on trial for in this documentary, and so we generally focus on the latter one, which was the Odin perspective. And so I will say I'm glad that they showed the perspective of Odin, his family, the people that were affected by it, obviously his mother, his sisters, and people around him, his best friend, their perspectives on Hernandez and the whole situation as a whole. Some of the cons about this documentary specifically, the intro, it's like a 007 intro. Why glorify him? The more I'm kind of thinking about it, one of my favorite true crime documentaries is The Jinx, probably of all time at this point. The Jinx does have this kind of fancy, high quality reenactment intro, and there's sort of that quality to this, but there's something about the Jinx that doesn't make it feel like they're glorifying the man and they're showing more of the life story. For Netflix, the intro for this Killer Inside documentary, it straight up looks like 007. I mean, there's the gun, people being, him being a superstar on the NFL, team, Patriots team. It shows him basically being glorified and then kind of showing, slight bits of, crime in between it. And I just wasn't crazy about the intro. Just, it didn't feel like it fit the right tone. And I will say they didn't talk about the victim nearly as much, but like I said earlier, it's probably because he was a nice guy. He, how much do you want to talk about 3 hours of a nice guy? It's obviously a shame what happened, and it's disturbing on a level that Aaron Hernandez didn't seem to really realize or comprehend what level of a reality he was living on. I mean, he generally was acting like a sociopath in ways that wouldn't make sense if he didn't have something wrong with him. So let's talk about spoilers for the Aaron Hernandez documentary real quick. This documentary shows a lot of Aaron Hernandez's family life, about his father, about how it was difficult growing up. His mother wasn't that great, uh, and towards his latter years, once he lost a lot of that parental guidance, it really just shifted him in the worst ways. It was definitely abusive in many ways. Might have had he might have been touched as a kid, abused. Um, they also talk about perspectives from other Patriot players and NFL players and college players. I think they talk about his time on the Gators, and with Tim Tebow's dumb smiling ass. I'll be honest, I could go on an hour rant about why I don't like Tim Tebow, and I'm sorry if you do, but that guy just pisses me off so bad. I don't know why. He comes off as the epitome of a fake flake or something like that. I don't know. He's the way. I mean, just the interview they had of him talking about Aaron Hernandez, and him smiling about it the entire time. I was like, get this guy out of here. I don't. It's pissing me off. Um, I did like how some of the talking heads, I don't remember if it was someone that was a journalist or something like that, said that, a lot of the times the victim is overshadowed from the killer. So I think it's, like I said, it's important to have this in here and talk about the people that were affected. Hernandezing, a viral sensation. When they discuss about Aaron Hernandez being arrested, they definitely talk about the viral sensation that happened around the world. I mean, the majority of people just don't take it seriously. They don't really understand what's going on, and all they see is surface level shit. And so when they see when people see one of their favorite superstars taken out in handcuffs and with a shirt on in an interesting way, yeah, it's probably gonna cause, I don't know, a viral sensation is not exactly what I would have, told people to do. It's not some sort of challenge, but it's interesting the way that people take it. It's like you're mimicking a murder. It's like I don't understand what, or an accused murderer at that point. So it's like I'm not really sure what people are, why people would do that. I don't know. I love that they talk about the perspective of people that have the same name as Aaron Hernandez. 'Cause given that's kind of it sounds like it would be a common name. Um, he says that he can't. One of the guys that was named Aaron Hernandez says he can't wear his Hernandez jerseys anymore because everyone thinks that he's wearing Aaron Hernandez. So I thought that was kind of funny. Although it's fucked up too. The crew perspective. Yeah, we already talked about that. How everyone thought about Aaron. Everyone pretty much said he was a pretty nice guy. He just needed some guidance. Are all jail conversations recorded? I thought this was something pretty interesting. I mean, half the documentary is of recorded conversations of him in jail. A lot of it mostly hopeful, a little bit, some of it anti-LGBT, but I was surprised to hear how intimate the conversations we were hearing that were in jail. So it's like, are all conversations in jail being recorded and re-listened to? It's like, whoa. And so does every inmate have like their own file of voice recordings they've had with somebody? I have so many questions after watching this, especially just the legalities of how they were able to get all of this stuff, all of the footage. So the merchandise perspective, there's a lot of perspectives within this documentary. I wanted to talk about the merchandising. What happens when a superstar commits a crime? Well, it seemed that the year that the Patriots were during that year, they were doing really well when Aaron Hernandez was caught. They said everyone with an Aaron Hernandez jersey can return it for a new one, and so not a different jersey, I guess. So there's a costly there is a big cost to having someone do something this crazy. Court perspective, in the third episode, we very much see the majority of Hernandez in court, and I thought one of the most interesting people that they were interviewing were Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft had only mostly good things to say about Aaron Hernandez, and then he gets on the stand, and you see how Hernandez starts to act when Robert Kraft is within the room, and it's weird to see Kraft being questioned in a way like that. You know, he's a billionaire, normally in a box seat, eating popcorn and drinking something. I don't know, living the life basically, in the back of a massage parlor. I don't know. He's usually doing not sitting on a stand in court, and so it was very odd to see him there. I kind of wish the coach would have been, honestly, but you could see how Hernandez very much looked up to the coaches, you know, and the owners of the team and people on the team. And I think there's a way that he did feel like he let them down in a way. Although the crime was extremely sloppy. I mean, they showed cameras everywhere. They showed text messages. They showed lack of, you know, they didn't even try to clean up the thing. They didn't even try to clean up the crime. And one of the girlfriends took out the gun. I mean, there was a lot of bad shit going on. I don't really understand how the his girlfriend did not get in trouble. And by the way, the victim of the crime was almost going to be the brother-in-law of Aaron Hernandez. They were dating sisters. And the sisters are not on very good terms. They're estranged sisters. Let me see. I got the night of show feelings. If anyone saw HBO the night of, I got very much that same vibes from that. Obviously, it's not based on a true story or anything like that, but I thought it was done very well. The family having to hear the crime, that was hard to watch. I know you watch the mother have to hear what Aaron Hernandez and the guys did to Odin, and you know, shot him in the shoulder, shot him in the back, shot him in kill shot. Like it just very difficult, very descript, and with photos, it was just very difficult to watch. Let me see. This also talks about how football connects people. I don't want to talk all about just the bad things about football. I think that what football did for Aaron Hernandez, if you want to talk about the positive things, it gave him structure. And the coaches definitely talk about how, specifically Hernandez, they didn't want him to go home. They were trying to keep him from going back to Connecticut so he wouldn't get go on drugs or, you know, do anything crazy or anything like that. They wanted him to stay, you know, with the Patriots, with the team, all that stuff. And actually, some of the people that were around Hernandez didn't want him to go back to Connecticut either. They said they wanted him to go. They liked the Patriots, but they thought it was too close to home. So I just, I was just thinking, wow, you know, what if he had gone to a different team? What if he had done this, that, the other? You know, would things be different? Let me see. Like, yeah, they have multiple indoor cameras of Aaron Hernandez in his house. They're probably like security cameras. I heard that he had bought. They explained that he bought security cameras for his house when he had gotten into an altercation with, I think it was Odin. Sorry, there was another guy that he had gotten in an altercation with. I forgot his name at the moment, but Aaron Hernandez apparently tried to kill this guy. And I'm trying to find this guy. Don't see that guy. No, there's one guy that he was accused of shooting after having an altercation and leaving him in a parking lot, and it ended up that he was still alive, and so yeah, I don't know where the hell he. They don't have him on IMDb, so I can't find him. Um, but anyways, they they show multiple different crimes, multiple different people upset with them. I mean, clearly Aaron Hernandez was in a bad way, and so that's why he was buying security cameras and whatnot. And the security cameras almost were more against him than anything, because they start using footage of him the following day after the murder of Odin, and in after they seem fine. All three of the guys that were accused of doing it are all hanging out at the house with the baby and just doing whatever. And Hernandez was saying his case was that, it was the other two guys that were with me that night. It wasn't me. And, I was scared for my life, which is obviously not true. I mean, you saw them, they were all hanging out with his baby, and they were just hanging out. They didn't seem like anything had gone wrong. Let's talk about one aspect of this documentary that I was not expecting. And I can't remember if I had heard this before or after his death. I feel like I might have heard it a little bit, but Aaron Hernandez had a secret sexuality part of his life, if that makes sense. I'm not exactly sure if Aaron Hernandez was bisexual or gay, but this was a big part of what the media was trying to spin at the time. And so the problem is, well, growing up, Aaron Hernandez, obviously he couldn't be gay under his father's reign, and so he did have I don't want to say a boyfriend, but he had, experiences with another male friend, and they have this male friend on being interviewed. I forgot. Let me see if I can find his name. I think he's on here. I swear I found this guy. Dennis Santucci and his father Tim Santucci, which I love Tim Santucci. That dude's father was hilarious. I thought that Tim Santucci should have had his own episode, if anything, because he was just laying down the law. And I really enjoyed how self-reflective Santucci was, alongside his son, Dennis. Dennis was the quarterback in, I don't know, back in high school for Aaron Hernandez, and he was having a quote-unquote relationship with Aaron Hernandez, and apparently his father didn't find out until he was, he was a man, he was late 20s, early 30s. And so Tim Santucci, the father of Dennis, he, Aaron's boyfriend back in high school, sort of, I thought Tim was a great representation of a progressive father in a way that can be self-reflective, in a way that I was not expecting. He says that, back in the day, it probably wouldn't have been okay under his household. He wouldn't have understood, but I really enjoyed the self-reflectiveness that they talk about, just sexuality being the difficult trials of being bisexual under a strict household. Ryan O'Callahan, former offensive tackle of New England Patriots, he is probably my most interesting character of. He's the most interesting character that is not immediately affiliated with the story. He talks about his struggle of being a gay man growing up as, a gay young boy, I guess, and trying to almost outdo the quote-unquote gay aspects of his life, instead of being clean-cut and superb like, quote, you might think they might be. a really high class metrosexual gay man, I guess. I don't want to say that all gay men are super tight and clean cut and sharp and whatever. I think that's a sort of a stereotype, but that's sort of what he was describing himself as, trying to be the anti. He wants to be he didn't want to be identified as gay so much that he was going to the lengths of eating terrible, just treating his body like terrible. He just he was big because he didn't want a girlfriend, so people wouldn't ask him why he didn't have a girlfriend. He says that it really didn't matter to him because he had planned on killing himself eventually, and that was really difficult to hear, because I mean this guy has been struggling all his life to be kind of the anti straight. He's been fighting being a straight man so hard that it's been this super inner conflict that honestly I could have sat there and listened to another hour of his story. I was very interested in this guy, in his struggle, but also the way that he's come to compromise with it, or not even a compromise, but somewhat of an acceptance of it, because I sort of like to think about it like, if he did not have that struggle as a young man, he might not have ever gone to the New England Patriots. He may never have gone to play college ball. He may have not have done any of those things, So it is interesting how our struggles can somewhat end up forming our career path, honestly, and trajectory. And so let me see. Let me finish this up real quick. I've kind of gone a little bit further than I wanted to. We do find out a little bit about the cousin Tanya, which was Aaron Hernandez's cousin, I believe, where they find the evidence of one of the murder cars in there. Once again, sloppy as hell. Definitely don't want to be leaving all that murder evidence everywhere if you're going to be doing like crazy shit. It really didn't make that much sense when it came down to it. Second episode was heavily focused on college. For me, it could have been a little bit shorter. It could have been edited down just a little bit. Football days and Boston murders. The third episode is focused on the court cases and CTE perspectives, as well as his sexuality. Also, does this documentary end on a pun? At the very end, I think they said that the caller you've talked to has hung up, and I'm pretty sure Aaron Hernandez hung himself. It cuts to black right there. I was like, this better not be a fucking pun right there, because I swear if they're making a pun at the end of a true crime documentary, I swear I will rip it a new one. But I can't get confirmation on that yet, so I don't want to say that. CTE was lightly touched upon in what is that Will Smith movie? I forgot what it was called. Concussion, I think. I might have a concussion not remembering it, but the movie wasn't highly, regarded that much, but it definitely brought a perspective of what is CTE, and honestly, I was in the dark about what CTE was until that movie, and then a little bit more explanation on this movie. But overall, what I found out is chronic traumatic enterobleptropy. Oh God, I know I didn't say that right, but whatever. Is a disease caused by repeated head injuries. Symptoms may include behavioral problems, mood problems, and problems with thinking. And symptoms typically do not begin until years after the injuries. CTE often gets worse over time and can result in dementia. And so there have been studies of different NFL players, Frank Guilford, Mike Webster, Ken Stabler, Andre Waters, Junior Seau, Chris Henry, Ralph Wenzel, Ray Easterling, Terry Long. There's a long list of history of CTE and players, and so to find out that 27-year-old 27-year-old Aaron Hernandez, or was he 28 by then? Sorry, normally I have this stuff pulled up, but to find out that he had such a terrible case of it at such a young age just seems like they should have, I don't know, thought about that or something like that. I don't know, but I was unaware he was 27. I was unaware about whether they should have, been looking into it because he was such a young man. I don't think that the majority of CTE cases have been that severe at such a young age. And so, yeah, it definitely opens our eyes in a way that we were not expecting. We did not expect, obviously, Aaron Hernandez to take his life. We didn't expect him to take anyone else's life. Odin Lloyd and his family, obviously, much respect to their entire family. And to the victims that we lost in the Boston shootings, to them as well, they lost people that had come over to a brand new country and were murdered for absolutely no reason. They were not involved in any crime, absolutely no wrongdoing, just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so it's it's saddening in a way, but also it's enlightening from a perspective of understanding what actually happened in the crime. I don't think this documentary fetishizes in the glorification of showing what happened in the crime. As a matter of fact, I kind of felt like the crimes were explained a little sloppily. They when they did the reenactments, I was kind of expecting a couple more shots of the, maybe even 3D models of what was happening. But I guess that's just a little bit too much. I don't know. I just felt like I was a little bit in the dark to understanding, one, the motive, which CTE, they seem to say that could have been a motive, but also just bad upbringing, bad, wrong place, wrong time, a couple of those things. Because there were people on the screen that said they didn't agree that CTE was the cause of all of this. And so it's like, I don't really know how you're supposed to say anything otherwise. I don't, except for saying that, he's just off his rocker. So it's, everyone wants to point their finger at a specific reason. And so, yeah, I think they lay out interesting reasons and causes why he might have committed this. But overall, I found it fairly interesting with respect to the victims. Obviously, we wish that had obviously never happened. But yeah, for the sake of the documentary, yeah, I thought it was effective. Thank you for listening to the LuckyDog Podcast. Please check out all the LuckyDog podcasts on SoundCloud, Google Play, all the popular podcast apps that you can think of. We're probably on it. You got the Twitch, you got the Facebook, you got the Instagram. We got a new Discord that we're trying out and trying to get everybody active on there. If you want to ask some questions to me personally, the Discord link is down below. We got Discord, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, email. All down below. Questions, comments, concerns. TheLuckyDogPodcast@gmail.com. We cannot run this podcast without you. If we can improve the podcast before you downvote, before you say, God dang it, this sucks. Tell me how I can improve. Tell me if I need to get another co-host on. Let me know if I can get some clips to play from the show. How can I improve? How can I make it more enjoyable for your ears? I'm trying to just have a fresh review out for you just about every Tuesday, with maybe a couple reviews sprinkled in between, but generally every Tuesday is when we're releasing them. And let me know how I can improve. That's what I want to do. I want to podcast and I want to improve. I got lots to say, so let me know the best way to deliver you the product. Thank you for listening to the LuckyDog Podcast. We can't do it without you. Take it easy.